as far as my burnout. I'd built this business. I sprinted up a mountain for 5.5 years, 100-hour work weeks, never taking a day off, building, 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 launching a book, growing my team. I went from 9 people to 22 people in less than 12 months. And I was the face, the rainmaker, the spokesperson for the book, the podcast host, the manager of the team, the business development lead, the client fire putter outer. Like I was all the hats. And I found myself basically on my knees the beginning of 2022 with diagnosed situational depression and full on physical depletion burnout. It was a very dark time.
Welcome to Business Origin Stories. I'm Amy Schutte, your guide to crafting a magnetic message for a profitable business. This is the podcast for you if you're ready to claim the transformative power of your own origin story and use it to create a brand that finally stands out. We're here to level up, but more importantly, I'm here to help you elevate your influence, your community, and your impact on the world. Go ahead, hit that subscribe button wherever you're listening. And remember, the stories you tell yourself are your greatest currency. Hello, my beautiful friends, and welcome back to the Business Origin Stories podcast. Today I have the immense honor of interviewing someone I am so grateful to call a friend, a mentor, Jessica Zweig. She's a serial entrepreneur, the founder of the Simply Be agency, a #1 bestselling author, and the host of the Spiritual Hustler podcast. Jessica recently wrote a new book called The Light Work, which we talk about in this interview. And this interview is so good. We dive into her book, but we dive into how Jessica is really creating a shift in the business world where she's pairing business and spirituality in a new way for female entrepreneurs. I know you're going to love this podcast. We get a little wild. We talk about aliens. We talk about all sorts of things. So buckle up. But I've loved Jessica for over a year now. I went to her retreat in Santa Fe in October, which was such a pivotal moment in my business timeline to learn from her and watch her really live out her values in real time. I hope you love this interview as much as I did. And if you're called to it, her book, The Light Work, is going to be out soon. And she has an amazing event on August 8th that we talk about that you can still get a ticket to attend. So stay till the end to learn all the details. And with that, let's dive in. I have talked about you a lot on this podcast, well, mostly about the Santa Fe retreat, because I've had some of our sisters on here. So your name has been brought up so many times. So I'm excited to actually introduce you to my audience and my community. But tell everybody right now where you are and then a little bit about what you do. And then we're going to dive into your new book. So give us the deets.
So where I am, like physically or in my
Sure.
timeline?
Let's start with physically. Where are you right now physically?
I'm in Nashville right now, which is where my home, which is such a gift because, as you said, I've been on a tour de force with this book launch and on lots of airplanes all over the country for the last few months. And it's been wonderful, but it's been a lot. So I have 3.5 weeks before my launch to simply ground and be home and do my rituals. So I'm very grateful to be here in Nashville physically. I needed it. And where I am in my timeline, just to give your audience some context, I'm a serial entrepreneur. I have started now 3 businesses. My first one was my School of Hard Knocks, critical success, financial failure, learned a lot along the way, applied those lessons to business number 2, which was a personal branding agency, which is how you and I connected because you read my first book, Be. And that was a beautiful chapter, but also came with its life lessons and spiritual growth around burnout and pushing our bodies to the ground as female entrepreneurs. And I sold that company about 7 months ago, which is wild. And now I'm coaching in my new business, which is really centered around the intersection of business branding, feminine energy, spirituality, host retreats, which you came to. And I do a whole bunch of things with female entrepreneurs. And I'm about to launch this new book, which is a full-time operation. So I feel, I've got my plate spinning, my hands full, but I'm doing what I really want to be doing. And I'm grateful, very grateful.
Yeah. Well, congratulations on selling your agency. That's a big deal.
Thank you.
Really
It is a big deal. Yeah, it was long blood, sweat, and tears road to get there, and yet wouldn't take it away for the world. It was, a beautiful chapter of my life, but, played the game of what I call the toxic masculine and won. And the world kept telling me, keep going. And so I did, and brought me to my knees after a certain point, because we can't hustle at that level and have it be sustainable. And that really was the impetus for a lot of what I talk about in this next book, and unhooking from that system.
Yes. Yes. And I found you, it's been a little over a year ago through our mutual friend, Danielle Page, and her podcast. And then when you had this retreat, I was like, I must go. I must be there. And that retreat was really so pivotal for me. So I want to talk about what you're doing now, because that was a big deal. But I'm curious, before we talk about your new books, I want to get into it. But I'm curious about this business side of things, because I feel like so many people are starting to pivot or want to change. And I'm curious, like, what set you up to say, I've built this thing and now it's time to move into selling it? Because that is a very specific decision when it comes to talk to me about that.
Totally. I'll talk about it from a pure tactical perspective, right? From a business lens, in the 3D, as I call it. I had built a business that I had turned into an asset. Like, it transformed itself over the years from a lifestyle business, something I was completely dependent on me, was my entire life, to something that actually started to run without me. I mean, I grew my team to about 30 people at its peak. I started it as a one-woman shop. And I got my leadership team really right towards the final 2 years, that allowed me to get out of the weeds and be on the business and think about the future, and just simply to have space to think about me again. And when that happened, I started to really get clearer. And this was really when I launched my first Claim Your Light retreat in the early part of 23, is, wow, I've always loved being in community with women. I know I can help them. Maybe if I do this next thing, whatever that will be, I'll do that. I'll do more of that. And I had also, on a personal level, burned out, but I also was proud of what I had done. I had nothing left to prove. Like, I took that business further than I ever thought. I feel like I left it all on the floor at the end of a big basketball game, and like sunk the ball. Like, I was done. Like, I did it. And so when you sell your business or you pivot, not to say that you have to get your business to a point where it's sellable. Some people just don't want to do it anymore, shut the whole thing down. And that's a beautiful choice too. There's no wrong choice. It's your life, and doesn't matter what other people think. But I had built the business to become an asset, and I mentally, emotionally, and spiritually was complete with it. And I was so hungry, that, I guess that's the word that just comes, to really follow more of my dharma. And it was just this deeper calling that I couldn't slow down. Like, I want to go be myself and not have the overhead that I had, and just be able to serve women. And I'm a emotional generator in human design. Like, I'm a Virgo rising, like Leo sun. I'm very, very, like, ambitious, and I can't not help myself sometimes from just like always planning. And so I did set the stage for jessicazweig.com behind the scenes the last few months before I sold, because I knew I was selling the business. So people really saw my launch as like a hard launch. I kind of just dropped the yellow jacket and came out with this whole new brand. But for me, it was about a 6-month to 12-month journey of me preparing for that pivot.
Yeah.
And, I don't think there's a wrong way to pivot. I just want to say to your audience, you're allowed to pivot. You're allowed to change. You're allowed to let go of your former identity, because most of us who are entrepreneurs, our businesses are our identities, and we change as humans. So it's a natural evolution to pivot, in my opinion.
How did you, because I think this comes up a lot for people, especially because your pivot, to me, watching you, it felt very natural and beautiful, but I've also been in your ecosystem, to be in this very corporate branding. And then now you've moved into this very flowy, feminine, spiritual hustler. It's quite a shift. And so I'm curious, what were some of the mental steps that you went through to get there? Because a lot of people look at this and they think, I'm in my comfort zone, I have financial security, and now I see this thing that maybe I really want to do, but how do I get there? Talk to me a little bit about your evolution
to where you are now? Because I think this leads into work and the book you're doing, or, the book that you're about to launch. But what were some of those mental hurdles that you had to walk through?
Well, it's a really big question. It's a beautiful question. And I think there are, of course, going to be mental hurdles of what will my clients think, or what will my team say, or what will my community, how will they react? And at the end of the day, it's not about them. It's about you. And I think the deeper I went inside and got closer to my truth, the layers started to shed, and I got clearer and clearer what made me feel good, what felt true and authentic to me. And there's also a point of just exhaustion around like playing a part that like you just have outgrown. And I think that's where the spiritual journey comes in, of really getting clear with yourself to build that relationship with your higher self, and for me, that's my spiritual practice and connecting with the divine on the regular. Like therapy, coaching, all of the things that I invest in for my own personal growth, so that is, it's ever evolving. And I think that it's like a spiral, like a continuum, like we're becoming something new all the time while we're unbecoming what we once were. And instead of measuring that journey against the outside yardsticks and just coming home to the voice inside your soul, which sounds preachy, but it's really the work, that would make, I think, anyone's pivot or evolution, I think, a lot more aligned than, and knowing those mental hurdles are going to come up, that there's always going to be a fear that arises, but the invitation is to move through those fears. And the other side of your comfort zone is where your expansion lives. So that was what I did, what I'm doing.
Yes, it's beautiful. I talk a lot about always coming home to ourselves because, with messaging and branding, you can message anything to be anything, but it's not worth it if it doesn't feel good to the entrepreneur or the business owner, because we can build ourselves a house of glass that we want to get out of. And so I love that you are moving in this direction. It's a huge paradigm shift. It's so needed. Tell me about your book.
So my book is a spiritual empowerment book for, I call it the high performing, most likely hypervigilant woman, which is all of us. And it was the, real inspiration for the book came at the end of 2022, when I had gone through the hardest year of my life as far as my burnout. I had built this business. I sprinted up a mountain for 5.5 years. Imagine the physical image of a sprint up a mountain. It's just not, it's crazy. 100-hour work weeks, never taking a day off, building, launching a book, growing my team. I went from 9 people to 22 people in less than 12 months. And there was a lot of chaos and shit broke. And it was, I was the face, the rainmaker, the spokesperson for the book, the podcast host, the manager of the team, the business development lead, the client fire putter outer. Like I was all the hats. And I found myself basically on my knees the beginning of 2022 with diagnosed situational depression and full-on physical depletion burnout. I couldn't leave my house for a few months. I couldn't shower. It was a very dark time. Healed my depression through ketamine, which is a breakthrough therapy, a psychedelic modality that allows you to get your brain working again, neuroplasticity, active inflammation down, because depression is a physical symptom. And yet I went right back into the hustle, the hamster wheel of my business, because I could not. And then I went to Egypt on a very serendipitously planned trip at the end of 22 and had just basically an identity death in that country. It's hard to explain. I mean, I do explain it in the book. And I was working on the light work. I had a proposal. My agent was shopping it to publishers. And I got back from that trip and I was like, I know what I need to do to this proposal now and make this book what I needed it to be all along, what it was waiting for. And I got a book deal about 2 months after I got home from Egypt and channeled the book in 3.5 months. It doesn't really feel like I wrote it when I read it back. It feels like I channeled it from a higher source.
Yes.
And I'm really coming out of the spiritual closet in this book. not just with my personal, very deep memoir-esque stories that I've never shared with the world in any form before, but my truth about what I believe, what's going on this planet, and what's happening in our relationship to the cosmos, and why humanity is truly here. And I'm feeling extremely, what I call nearsighted, like nervous, excited about people reading it because it's so raw and naked. But again, I feel like I didn't even do it for me. It wasn't about me. I was the vessel it poured through. And I'm really clear that it's going to get into the hands of a lot of women who, the women who need to read it are going to read it.
Yeah. Reading it, it feels like you channeled it. Like when I finished it, I was like, whoa. There's a lot of books in the world, right? We've all read the books. This one is so special. I'm really excited to talk about. I want to talk about a couple of things because I know you've done a lot of podcast interviews and you've gone through a lot of the book, but some of the things that I personally loved and has felt probably because of the retreat. I have my little, people can't see us, but I have my little triangle pyramid that we did at the retreat. So audience, my listeners, you can't see this, but at Jessica's retreat, we did this incredible exercise from your book. And I'm hoping you can talk us through that piece. It's about your mission, your creation, your calling, your cause. It was one of the most powerful parts of, I think, your retreat. And afterwards, everyone stood up and talked about those three things. And everyone was like crying the whole time. So much emotion. I'm crying right now. Yeah, it was so beautiful. And I keep it near me all the time because it just reminds me of something that's bigger. We're doing something bigger. So can you talk me through that part in your book? Because I think each chapter and each section of the light is really powerful. But this future light, the mission, what you're really shifting everyone towards is incredibly.
Thank you so much. And by the way, I've been on a lot of podcasts, yes, but not everybody has read the whole book cover to cover. So it's such a gift to me that you did read it and that you can ask me these questions. It's like the best feeling. The future light is the final section because so it goes inner light, outer light, and future light. Future light being the last section is actually kind of my favorite section because it's really where I take it home around what the game is that we're really all here playing as human beings on this planet. And that conversation, that concept of mission over purpose was really inspired by one of the temples that I went to in Egypt called Karnak. And we get, every temple has sort of got a mystical theme according to our guides that took us around the country. And when we get to Karnak, we're on the bus and our leader comes on the microphone. We're on this like big bus and Karnak is known to be the temple of purpose. And some are known to traverse these walls and find their purpose. And I was like in the back of the bus and I was rolling my eyes to myself very, very arrogantly, basically saying to myself, I already know my purpose. Look at my life. Look at my business. Look at my podcast. Look at my book. I'm on purpose. I'm not going to find anything new here. So I walk through the temple for an hour or two as I'm about to get back to the bus. I was called into this like very obscure structure. It's one of the biggest temples of all of Egypt. It's like on 200 acres. And I went into this space. It was all dark. And there was a stream of light coming through the crack in the ceiling. And I stood under that light and I just felt something. And as I was walking out to go back to the bus, there was this tiny white feather that started floating from the sky in front of my face. And I just put my hand out to catch it. And it landed right in my palm. It's this tiny, I still have this feather. And and my friend Laura was standing right next to me. She's, whoa. And I was like, take a picture. I have a picture of this moment. And I heard the universe laugh at me. And it said, Jessica, your purpose is not what you thought it was at all. Like, you want to live this free. You want to feel this light. And other women want to feel this too. And be powerful in this freedom and levity. And that was the unlock of this concept that I put into the book that I walk and I believe in, that our purpose is connected to what we do, but our mission is why we are. And I created a framework in the book to really unpack what your mission could be that is connected to your creation, which is typically our businesses, things we create in the world that have impact, that make us money. our calling that is maybe connected to that, maybe separate, that is something we would do that we wouldn't even get paid for. We love it so much. And then our cause, what we're leaving behind, like why we incarnated here, the legacy we're going to leave. For some people, it might be their daughter, for some people, it might be lifting other women up. For some people, it might be the earth, and just to open up the aperture of our assignment here, which I just think we're just here to fuck shit up for the greater good. Like we're here to play a big game, and it's not for our own personal white picket fence and putting food on the table and taking a couple of vacations a year and having a great income. Like it's bigger than that. And it's ultimately to shift this planet back into more love and light and harmony. And we all play a role in that. And so that chapter, frankly, is one of my absolute favorite chapters because I'm like really unapologetic about my renegade light warrior beliefs. And I hope it activates women. And we did this at the retreat where I had us all, take all these magazine clippings, 3 little triangles, and basically make a mood board-esque collage of the expression of creation, calling, cause to create this multidimensional triangle, which is, the most unbreakable sacred geometry in the universe, and also the divine feminine if you flip it upside down. And I really love that you asked me this because it's such a big part of the message of the book, that chapter.
Yeah. Connecting the spiritual and the business piece, I think, are really powerful because a lot of spiritual-esque things can feel very disconnected from business. And so I like that you've really married both of them together because I do think it's important. The things we're creating abundance, creating opportunities for people is so critical. How are people receiving this message now? Because in that chapter, which it was one of my favorites just because I've done this exercise with you, but you say, I'm just going to read a little part from your chapter because I loved it. You said, we are the stewards and the way showers and the literal trailblazers of the next generation and the generation and the generations beyond them. And the key word here is remembering. But talk to me about how are people understanding what you're doing? Because what you're doing is sacred work, but it's also new for a lot of people. So
Yeah.
what are you getting?
It's really been so beautiful. I wrote this book in 3.5 months, then I got it edited, and then it felt like within 6 months, people were holding this advanced reader copy in their hands. And then I went on this podcast tour, and I'm talking to really the only people who've read the book are media and hosts of shows. And it has been, if I may say, like really affirming because I'm like I said, I'm nearsighted. I don't know how people are going to react to it. And the overall response has been so massively positive that people are getting it. And I think people are way more interested in spirituality now than ever before. And they're hungry for this message. I think my book is really, thankfully, right on time. There have been a few, just to be real with you, I talk about the matrix in the book and I call out, what I call the forces that are trying to rule us. And they come in the form of mass media and corporate capitalism, big government, big food, big pharma.
Mm-hmm.
And there's been a couple podcasts that I've been on where the hosts, for whatever it's under their jurisdiction, is their show, have clipped some reels where they have put me out there talking about that. And I did get a little bit of reaction from some corporate clients of mine who felt offended by that.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's interesting because I'm not trying to convince the CEO of Pfizer to read this book, and there are good people in medicine and there are good people in food and there are good people in even the government and corporate companies for sure. When we really zoom up, this is again my philosophy, and I'm just going to go there. When we really, really zoom up, there's probably about 100 people on this planet that control like 90% of the wealth.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not even about money for them. It's about control and power. to really steer the human species in a direction where they stay in a vibration of fear and sickness. And, I haven't really said this stuff out loud, but it's been what I've believed to be true for a long time. And I'm protected with this book. Like I had that moment a couple months ago when a client came and I was like, fuck. And Megan Taylor, who was just on your show, my best friend, I went to her and she's, Jessica, you are protected. There's so much light around this book. And I've sort of accepted the assignment. I think my higher self has, that if I take some shots for saying truth, I think that's my next. I'm available for that. I'm ready for that. But I think there's more love and vibrational, high frequency, like connection that this book is going to impart than that. But that has been an interesting experience in the last few months, if I'm going to be real.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that. I was just talking about this the other day with someone where I was just saying, we are so powerful and we have forgotten that. We don't know it. We don't claim it. And how powerful would we be? Those 100 people controlling all the things. If everyone knew they could heal themselves, they can do these things. And one thing I loved about your book as I was reading it, you talk a little bit about fairy tales, like with the love section, but the spell that everyone's under. And I just kept thinking, it really does feel like a Sleeping Beauty type of moment reading your book, where it's like, what if we all woke up and realized, oh my gosh, that's what your book felt like to me. It was like reading like the real part of it, like the real end part of a fairy tale where happily ever after actually comes back to coming home to yourself. Yeah. That's what I loved. I'm so proud of you. Talk to me a little bit about that, because you've healed yourself from things. You've healed yourself from burnout. What do you want women to, what's the one main thing you want them to know after they read this book? If you could give them just one quick elevator pitch mantra that they take away, what would that one thing be?
That they are more powerful than they've ever really given themselves credit for, more powerful than they even know, that they are so needed at this time on this planet, that their lifetime is not an accident, that they've incarnated for a very divine and special reason to do this work, actually, to heal their trauma, to look at their shadows, to embrace all the pieces of themselves. This is the incredible opportunity that she has as a human being on this earth to do this work. And that when she does that, she activates. She becomes actually unstoppable. She becomes authentic and magnetic in the way that she's been probably desiring to be her whole life. Mm-hmm. And that, I know this is the one thing, but I'm going to give you two things. She's not alone. She's just not alone. And there's power in numbers. I say that in my book, that I've used my own personal story simply as, hey, sister, let's hold hands. I've been where you've been, because we're all women and we've had different specifics to our circumstances, but every one of us has hated our bodies and have felt disempowered and have scarcity with money and have dated toxic people and had our heart broken and have had girls be mean to us and our parents be hard on us. There's no reason for you to ever feel alone in this experience. And if you've come to my book, you're a member of the family of light. You chose it for a reason. You're here to play a bigger game. You're here because you're reading this book because you have woken up, or you're in the process of waking up, and you're accepting your assignment. And so, yeah, that's what I'd want her to know.
Both of those are perfect. That leads right into the sisterhood conversation, because you have become, this probably wasn't natural for you, right? But you have become the connector of everybody, the biggest cheerleader, the permission slip giver. And that was the biggest thing, I think, out of the Santa Fe retreat, because I think a lot of us have felt disconnected from other women. Creating a business is lonely. It is hard. And so for you to create spaces, or give other people to create those, permission to create those spaces, is an incredible gift of yours. I'm hoping you'll talk a little bit about your philosophy with mentorship and connecting with other women, because I do think shifting, but it's still not quite there, but you've done a beautiful job of it. Talk to me about, yeah, give me some insight there and how you're doing this.
Yeah. So, I grew up in a very affluent suburb and I was never popular. I was never a cool girl. I never had a clique. The girls were very mean to me, actually. And I never had a group of women girlfriends until like my late 20s. And when I found them and I started to hone, my career around, being a female entrepreneur and aligned with other female entrepreneurs, there was this sense of belonging and safety that healed those deep sister wounds.
Mm-hmm.
And, I really got to credit my mom in a big way because she really taught me from a very young age that no one is better than anybody. Just because you have a fancy bag or you live in a big house or you drive a nice car, like everybody is just a human being and is worthy of compassion and zero judgment. My mom really did give me that. And I really come from that lens. Like part of me, I was an artist, an actress. I never played sports, so I don't really have a competitive bone in my body, which I think is sometimes a bad thing, but like also a gift. Mm-hmm. And because I have transformed and alchemized so much of my trauma truly in safety and sisterhood, that's what I want to create every day. It's really my highest calling is to bring women into spaces, whether it's at a retreat or in a big group program or one-to-one or on a Zoom, to just simply all see each other as being on the same team because we're women. It doesn't matter what age you are, race, size, what you're wearing, like we're really all on the same team. And if I can, and that's my calling and my mission, if I can play that role and I love connecting people. I've, started my career hosting big events. Like I love bringing people together. It's such a joy for me to host, dinner parties and gatherings and parties and retreats. And I just feel like there's, to the retreat in Santa Fe, you all learned new business tools and got activated spiritually. And we had the shaman and we had the horses, but it was like all of us coming together in that container of this beautiful kaleidoscope of all these different identities and seeing such sisterhood form from that. And it's still going. Like that WhatsApp group, that it's like my pride and joy, that WhatsApp group. I'm not even kidding. You can't put a value on that. It's priceless.
Yeah.
And to me, that's really what it's about. And when we come to women, groups of women, and I talk about this in the book, like there's sisterhood with a little s, which is I support women, women for women, hashtag female empowerment. But it's a whole nother game when you're like, I'm going to show up for you. I'm going to fly across the country for you. I'm going to buy your product. I'm going to tell everybody about your book. I might have a client opportunity that I could take, but my friend is actually better for you. So I'm going to forego this money for myself so that she rises. I'm going to feel not triggered, but amplified watching her hit the New York Times. It's just this frame. I'm like, there's enough to go around for all of us. And the more we rise, she rises, I rise. We all rise. And I believe that to my core. And, I don't really get jealous of other women. And if I do, like in my moments, which is very rare, I'm like, that's your shit, Jessica. Gotta look at that. I'm very clear on that. So, maybe my third book will all be about this because I love this so much. And I loved that chapter too. All my chapters in my book are like my children. I'm like, which one do I like the most? The one on sisterhood is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's incredible. And I think, it really is one of your gifts. And you've said that to me multiple times, like attracts, and when we rise, we all rise together. And that was so helpful because my podcast was launching around the same time you were launching yours. And it was so intimidating because yours was so beautiful and scripted. And I was like, oh my gosh, I cannot. Let's like hide for a little bit longer. And finally I was like, no, Jessica wouldn't want that. That's so silly. So but it's so beautiful because you continuously live that, show that, and encourage other women to do that. And that is a true gift and a true power. So Thank you for doing that for all of us.
Well,
It's a big deal.
you're welcome. And I say in that chapter, it's called Female Friendships, the Greatest Medicine
Mm-hmm.
of Them All. And,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Mm-hmm.
if you ever have that feeling again, Amy, you just call me. Be like, so how did you do that script? And I'll tell you.
Thank you. I will. I will. It was so beautiful. You're a master to watch for launching. But I'm wondering, Jessica, you have a couple cool events coming up for your launch since you are a master of launching and very thoughtful planning. Tell me about your book launch date and your big Lionsgate event so people can get it if there's still time.
Yeah. So this is coming out about a week before my book launch, which is on August 6th. That's my book birth date. And that so happens to be 2 days before what I feel like a once in a generation day, which is August 8th, which is Lionsgate 88. And it's 2024, making it 888 because 2024 equals the number 8. So it's the most auspicious day of the year when it comes to wealth. The money, the number 8 represents financial prosperity, manifestation, infinite possibilities. It's an infinity sign. And it's also the Lionsgate portal, which is when the sun star of our galaxy, our solar system, aligns with Sirius, which is the second brightest star in our entire galaxy. They align, their sister stars, and it happens once a year, every year, and it's a portal that activates and opens, and all of this galactic cosmic consciousness comes down onto the planet. Whether you're woo-woo or not, you will feel it in the subtle realms. It's happening to us. And I'm hosting a live virtual event called Breakthrough to a New You, because I really believe this is going to be the day that people feel a shift. And it's a 6-hour global summit online with Michael Beckwith, Koya Webb, and Danielle Page, our mutual friend, are my guest speakers. And it's going to be a whole experience on activating feminine energy, business mastery. I'm going to teach a lot about business and branding. Michael Beckwith's going to activate us spiritually. Koya Webb is going to get us into our bodies to experience physical upgrades. Danielle is going to talk about the science of the cosmos and what's happening in the universal energies. It's a day to really align your life with intention with the universal energies. And when we do that, that's when things really accelerate. And when we come together in mass form, we've got a couple thousand people who are registered for this. Our intentions amplify. Like this is scientifically proven. When a group of people come together and focus their attention on a similar frequency, it accelerates and it amplifies actually the whole collective, but your life and your timeline. And it's $35 and it includes a book. And I would love if your community came out for it. It's going to be a really special day.
Yeah, I hope everyone listening grab a ticket because you still have some time, right? It's coming out on the 30th. So you still have some time.
Oh, yeah.
The ticket. I think that's perfect. I want to talk a little bit because for people that are listening and they're like, Lionsgate, what?
Yeah.
I mean, Jessica, your book, and we didn't go too deep into it, but your book is quite a shift from like the normal business book, especially your original book that you wrote was about personal branding. It's the best personal branding Bible. It's amazing. This book, you like launch it off right with aliens, Egypt. You go there real quick, which is why I probably should have explained that at the beginning, which is why this is such a shift for Jessica away from like corporate, buttoned up type of woman to like, we're going there. So, but if this is fun and this is something that's like sparking you personally to grab your book. But was that, I'm curious though, because the alien conversation is definitely becoming more mainstream. Can we go there for a second? I think it's fun.
100. My favorite conversation.
More mainstream, but it's still not quite there. Where did you, but you said you had this book like kind of planned before you went to Egypt. So was this already on your radar tell me a little bit about how you got from before to your light activation in Egypt to now.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So, okay, where do I want to take this? Because there's a lot I could say about this. This is a big conversation. So I'll just back up by saying a couple years ago in 2018, I had a reading with a shaman. There was no medicine. There was just me on her massage table. She put her hands on my head and we sat there for an hour in silence and she journeyed me and I went somewhere else. And when I went to this place, I felt beings. I felt a sense of home. Like there's no other way to describe it than home. And I come back into my body after this experience and I look at her and I'm like, what just happened to me? And she said to me that I am a Palladian and the Pleiades is a constellation in our galaxy. And I was like, what are you talking? I had never heard of this. It sounded kind of wild, but it felt true in my body. And it set me on this deep path to study the Pleiadians. And the Pleiadians are the original bringers of the light onto this planet. And so I knew I was going to write a book. The word light was going to be in the title. I worked with lots of different variations, but the Palladian teachings, there's many books on them, many, many books on them. And their teachings are rather esoteric and dense, and they're kind of fringy books that the average person would definitely not want to read because they're dense. But I've read them all and I understood them immediately. Like it was like a language I knew. And I really had the intention to translate them in my book from the beginning. And then I went to Egypt and had this massive experience. I had many massive experiences, but the biggest of them all was in Dendera's temple, which is the temple of Hathor. And I got essentially struck by white lightning in that temple. And my entire auric field expanded into the infinite universe. And I started hearing a chorus of voices immediately speaking to me in rapid succession. And I knew they were the voices of the Pleiadians. And so they gave me some messages that I've translated into this book quite literally. And, here's what I'll say, just to kind of give your audience a little less, like a little bit more grounded understanding of kind of why I so firmly believe this to be real. This is NASA and Harvard, like what I have disseminated, and I'll be very Cliff's Notesy. But when we look up at the Milky Way galaxy, imagine it on full blast and we see billions of stars. Okay. That galaxy is one of trillions of galaxies in an ever expanding universe, like trillions and quadrillions. I mean, we can't even really wrap our brains around how big the universe is. When we look up at the stars, just take our own galaxy, there are more planets in the universe than there are stars. I'll say that again. There are more planets in the universe than there are stars. Mm-hmm. So we're looking up at billions of stars because that's what we can see. And we can't see the planets that are orbiting around them. Our solar system, with our sun star, we have 9 planets that are rotating around it by the gravitational pull. Earth is what's called a Goldilocks zone, which means it's not too hot. Mercury and Venus, life can't exist there. It's not too cold. Mars, Jupiter, Uranus, Saturn. The idea that Earth would be the only planet in the entire infinite universe that has that proximity to a sun star where life can form is scientifically impossible. Oh. And in our galaxy specifically, there are a series of star clusters that have, I believe, civilizations, different systems and families. And you might be a Palladian, Amy, you might be a Minnetonkan or an Arcturian or a Orion, but it's an interesting thing to explore. Typically, what I have found, these star families have specific qualities that you can see yourself in. And the Palladians are usually light-eyed. I kind of have a face like them. I will say I look like an alien. They're typically very mission-driven. They're usually in seats of leadership. They've never really been accepted by society. There's a bit of like rebel energy to them, which is totally me. And so this has just been, frankly, identifying with my star family has been one of the most affirming and healing components to my spiritual journey, because it's allowed me to understand myself, which is what we use astrology for, the Enneagram for, the Myers-Briggs test. It's like why we love all of these things, so that we understand ourselves better. And I've understood myself probably the most deeply through the Palladians. And so I feel like I've done a pretty good job in the book by not freaking people out with it, just saying, here's what they say, here's how I interpret it, here's what you can take, and or not. Leave the rest. I'm not here in this book to convince you to believe in aliens. If this does not resonate, there is so much more in the book. It's just me interpreting light through my own lens, which has been personally informed by my studying of the Pleiadians.
Mm-hmm. And I think, I mean, since I've read the book, it is very grounded, and your storytelling within it is really powerful as well, because you take us back to moments in your own life. And, what is most personal is most general. Like, we've all had those moments where, the fat shaming, or like just the things that you talk about all the way through. I'm like, yeah, we all, I mean, maybe not, but, we grew up through the 90s, 2000s, and that was a whole different thing. And so for most women, we have learned to be so small and quiet and certain ways. And this book, I think, unlocks, like we talked about at the beginning, the spell, the remembering, the Sleeping Beauty moment where you wake up and you're like, oh, I'm actually a princess and this is what I'm doing. But I think that's what I love. That's what I loved about this book. So I like that you go there, because you do talk about Egypt a lot. There are, disclaimer, there are aliens in this book, but it's very thoughtfully done for the average person I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah. You will after you read my book.
Yeah. It's pretty powerful. And if you want like a real non-woo-woo book, your book B is also a good place for people to start if they're curious about personal branding.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I love that book. Is my first baby, and it is a very practical, tactical, personal branding business book. But if you read the book again, you'll notice I talk about light throughout the whole book. All of my frameworks that I've trademarked and my branding methodology are named after cosmic things, like the hologram and the supernova and the pinnacle. Like, all of that it's always been there. I'm just now pulling back the curtain and like coming out the closet big time. But I do. My mentor said, I had breakfast with her like a year ago as I was writing this book, and thinking to myself, back to your original question at the beginning of the episode, like, what mental hurdles did you have to come around? I remember talking to her like, I'm going to lose everybody. Like, this feels, this is a pivot. And she goes, Jessica, I would not call it a pivot. And I was like, okay, it's an evolution. And she said to me, no, it's a revelation, a revealing of what's always been there.
Yes.
Yeah. That made me feel really good when she said that.
Yeah, I see that. One last quick question before we, dial this back, but how are you combining? Because now you're coaching women, you sold your agency, but you still have all this, obviously, business knowledge, business membership coaching. How are you coaching people now with this combination of business and spiritual? What does that look like for people if they're curious about working with you?
Yeah. So I coach all sorts of women in different kinds of containers. Most women come to me because they need help with their messaging, their branding, their product suite, their strategy. That's an expertise I guess I have now after doing it for 15 years. And I love that. But many of these women are feeling disconnected from their truth, and they're overworked, and they're swirling, and they don't feel worthy, and all of the things that, I can deeply relate to and have come through. And so it's really a feminine approach to helping my clients build businesses that feel totally in alignment with them. I'll give you also a sneak peek into something that you don't know yet, but I'll tell you in your audience. So I'm launching my first online certification program in August. It's going to be called the Feminine Frequency Business School. And it is 12 weeks of business certification, taking you through all of the parts of being a leader and an entrepreneur, and building a brand, and learning how to sell and market and productize and speak and Instagram, social, like it's all there. But I'm taking you through each module through the lens of an Egyptian goddess and the chakra system.
Cool. Okay.
So it's very grounded in the sense of the business 3D, and yet giving women these new codes of how to build a business from a feminine frequency. And I'm very excited about it. So there's blending and merging happening in my one-to-ones all the time, but I'm really excited to bring these two worlds together in this certification program.
That sounds amazing. Oh, I'm excited to hear more. That's amazing. Thank you for sharing that sneak peek.
Yeah.
Jessica, thank you so much for everything you've given us today. Is there one last thing you want to leave besides buy this book, but one last thing or knowing that you want to leave with everybody?
such a good question. I know you shared that with me at the beginning of this podcast, and I hadn't thought of the answer. And yes, this is what came to me. I'm imagining a lot of your listeners are women. And there's this sort of timeline I often think about. I think about it all the time, actually, around the last sort of 4,000 years, right, of our ancestors and our parents' parents, and all the things we've inherited and that have been encoded in our DNA. And you could call the last 4,000 years the dawn of the patriarchy, right? And that's simply when shit just started getting written down and church and state were formed and war and territory and control. And it's manifested through what I'd call the dark ages, and we're coming now into the light. And this is what Hathor and all the Pleiadians told me in Egypt, is that the feminine frequency, which is what's inspired my program in the book, is returning. And it's your job to be a leader of that, but it's not up to you. It's up to all women to be a leader of that. And if you look at the history of the human species, we've actually been around for a couple 100,000 years. And prior to the patriarchy, we lived in a matriarchy, where this whole planet was erected upon the principles of the feminine. We are living on a mother earth. And so to leave your audience just knowing that if she's found herself, to your podcast, if she's found herself to this conversation, to my book, she is a leader of this new earth. And it is so important that we, not to diminish the masculine is divine. In equal measure, we need harmony, yin yang, polarity. We need both. We've just overvalued the masculine in this current society. And so for your listeners to leave this conversation with knowing she didn't incarnate here as a woman by accident, that she's part of this future that we are co-creating right now to build a better world for those generations and the generations after them to inherit. What we do now with our timelines matters so much. And to really remember that she's a piece of not God, but the goddess, because God is the goddess. So that's what I would leave her with.
Thank you so much for that. That's such a beautiful, beautiful share. And tell everyone, Jessica, where can people find you? Where can they buy your book? And on your 8/8 event?
My biggest joy is when I hear from podcast listeners of these shows that I'm on. So if you're part of Amy Schutte's community, you're my people. So come find me. I'm on Instagram. It's where I spend most of my time. I'm at Jessica Zweig. And you can go to my website, Jessica Zweig, to learn about all the things that I do. And go to jessicazweig.com/breakthrough to get your ticket to the August 8th event. And I would just love to see your people there.
Thank you so much. I can't wait. Jessica, thank you so much for being here with us. I can't wait to share this with everyone. And yes, we also have a retreat coming up. Your retreats are exquisite. So yes, you have a retreat coming up, and that's in January. Is that right?
It's in January in Riviera Maya, Mexico at Ontario, which is, I only host them at bougie 5-star locations. And this is one of the hottest new properties in all of that area. It's a boutique hotel. And yeah, it's January 26th to the 30th. We have quite a few women already signed up, but plenty of spots left, and would love to call in anyone of your community. It's a 5-day retreat on business, branding, spirituality. We had all sorts of women from different industries come. It's unlike anything I do. It's really, they're kind of hard to even put into words, but like I was saying earlier, the sisterhood component is for life. It's invaluable. Yes. And every single woman that has come through my retreats, it's like a pivot point for them. Like it's a moment in their timelines where everything starts to shift and activate. It's called Claim Your Light, because that's really what you do at those retreats. You claim your light. So I'd love to see anybody from your world hit us up.
Yeah. Big recommendation for that, because it was huge, pivotal for me in my business. So with that, Jessica, thank you for being here.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I will talk to you soon, my beauty. I love you. Thank you for having me.
I love you too. Thank you, friend.
Thanks for listening to Business Origin Stories. Love the podcast? Be sure to share it with a friend or colleague and give us a review on Apple Podcasts. Join me on Instagram and make sure to sign up for our weekly email.